If you guys know anything about Ichigo versus Naruto, you all would know that the matchup is a very controversial matchup. When it comes to Bleach scaling, people will oftentimes overhype the verse, getting into outerversal to high outer or high outer plus to boundless. Obviously, I think we can agree that that's not really a reasonable scale for the verse. However, there are also people who claim Ichigo is country or continental, which is pretty insane considering the fact that he is insane feats, and the Bleach verse in itself might be the most misunderstood verse within the anime community. So today I thought to myself, well, how about we not only give them the benefit of the doubt, but we pit them up against a certain DC character. The character going to be pitting them up against is the Flash. Now, before you all start freaking out in the comments saying that obviously Wally washes the verse, we're not going to be using Wally. Not only are we going to be using Barry Allen, but we're going to be using his CW or live action counterpart. And we're going to see how far he compares to the Bleach verse. How far is he going to get? Would he be an actual threat to the verse, or would he just be a low tier that would lose to basically anybody? So to talk about Bleach scaling, first of all, right, we do know that within Bleach, people are going to try to argue that the universe is called like Sekai, so that can just be argued to be at its planet. But obviously, we know that that's disingenuous, as we know that Senjimaru actually calls the realms Tenchi. Tenchi within Japanese actually translates to basically a billion worlds in Buddhism, or this doesn't really actually mean worlds per se, but this can actually be argued to be a whole universe. And because of this, I think it would be reasonable to say that these are more than just planets. So no, the Soul Society is not just a mere planet and hueco mundo as well. They are their own universal constructs with their own space times. I'll get back on that later. And we also know that this can also just be argued to be all of creation as well. Now, another thing we also know is true is that the living universe actually has galaxies, and even Ichigo kicks a rock into a distant galaxy as well. And we even see this in the anime as well. So it should be pretty obvious and not a debate that the living world actually does have its own universe, and that we even see galaxies and it's mentioned. It's pretty consistent, and it'd just be disingenuous or downplay to say that these are just mere planets or solar systems or something like that. You also know that the parallel world, know that the Shinigami world mirrors or acts like a parallel universe to the living world. Because of this, the Soul Society should just upscale off this, and it should be obviously be proven to actually be a universe. And we know this is true because in Bleach chapter 148, we literally see a distant starry sky, and it literally says the stars are out. So we obviously see that this is a universe. And even Ichigo actually verbatim states that the universe is infinite in size, meaning the Soul Society should be its own infinite 3D universe. So this should be some consistent universal scaling. On top of that, we also know that the living world and Soul Society are separated by this barrier called the Dangai. The Dangai has been stated to be a disconnected space surrounded by a torrent of layers and layers of time. And even Mayuri states this in the anime. Mayuri is obviously a scientist who rivals Kisuke Urahara in terms of intelligence. And because of that, I think he would be reliable to come to this. On top of that, we also know that the universes have their own functional parallel timelines, and that if you cross the Dangai, you can end up in another one, which can actually range from centuries. And we also know that the Dangai can actually be argued to be a hyperspace. Because of this, we can actually argue that the Dangai can be 5D, and I'll explain why. Not only has the Dangai been stated to be cut off from time and space, but on top of that, World and Bleach have their own temporal axes and their own time flow. And on top of that, the Dangai has its own time flow as well. So it would really not be too much of a stretch to say it. And it would obviously be consistent to say that as qualitative superiority over a 5-dimensional hyperspace. Because of this, we can get this to low complex multiversal. And the Garganta has also been stated to be something that extends to infinity as well. So this should just support that it's infinite in size. Now, how do they stack up against the Flash? The Flash, as we all know, obviously not his comics counterpart, but this live action counterpart. This is CW Flash. CW Flash actually in season 1 can do feats like straight up time travel through sheer speed. This would already get him to immeasurable speed. On top of that, we also know that even in the Crisis on Infinite Earths event, he can move to realms like Vanishing Point, which are beyond space and time, further supporting the fact that he has immeasurable speed. Now, we also know that he should be basically consistently high hyperversal at a massive low ball, considering the fact that he scales to the speed force. And the reason why he scales to the speed force is because Dion was actually verbatim stated to be more powerful than the speed force, and CW Flash can actually fight against him, meaning he should scale to him. And the same speed force can create the Black Flash. The Black Flash can harm Smallville Clark, and Smallville Clark can actually do insane feats like tank the Bleed. The Bleed is a space that surrounds all dimensions within the DC cosmology, which will include infinite dimensions. And the reason why I'm saying these are infinite dimensions is because quantum mechanics exists, and quantum mechanics are actually tied to said infinite dimensions in nature, which would easily give Smallville Clark, and by extent CW, very high hyperversal levels of attack power. However, the only issue is there are two ways people are going to try to argue against this. Number one is people are going to try to argue that it's not canon to DC because obviously this is the CW and the comics are a whole different thing compared to the CW, and they're not the same. However, we know this can be proven false because Earth 33 exists within the CW verse, and within DC, Earth 33 is mentioned within the DC guidebook as well, which would obviously mean that they would have the same cosmology and they would exist within the same verse. It's not really like he's scaling to something else. And another issue people are going to try to argue is that CW Barry doesn't actually have immeasurable speed. The reason why is because he's struggling to reach Mach speeds. And because he can't reach Mach speeds, he wouldn't be beyond the linear flow of time. However, keep in mind that this is still immeasurable, as not only did he move beyond the flow of time, linear flow of time to time travel, which qualifies for immeasurable speed, but this is just his own laws of physics for said verse. Like, for example, right, we can't apply the Naruto power system to like the One Piece power system. Verses have their own rules and laws. They have their own laws of physics. This is not really an anti-feat or a downscale. So this should just prove that he's immeasurable speed. And we also see him verbatim time travel. If he moves beyond the linear flow of time and he time travels, this is obviously immeasurable speed. And using CSAP and VSBW, this would further support this. All this would mean is that his verse has different laws of physics than other verses. And by this logic, unironically, by this goofy logic, the Naruto power system would work the exact same as the One Piece power system. Chakra and Haki would work the same. Or Chakra and Reishi would work the same, which obviously is not true. Like in versus battle, verses have their own laws of physics, as I stated earlier, and their own rules. So yes, Barry should be immeasurable speed consistently with high hyperversal attack potency. Now, when it comes to the Bleach verse, obviously I'm not gonna get into every single character scaling, but the verse should be like 6-dimensional in nature or low complex multiversal. In case you didn't know, this is already a wash. Not only does Barry have massively higher attack potency than anybody in the verse, but he's insanely fast. Too fast for them to realistically deal or keep up with him. They're realistically going to get speed blitzed by him. However, there are many arguments. Bleach characters are known for their insane hacks. How does Barry counter all of this? The simple answer is easy. We know that in Bleach, if you're stronger than your opponent, you can negate their hacks. The reason why is because Soy Fawn's Bankai could not work on Aizen, and Aizen actually was able to negate it by explaining that because his reiatsu was higher than hers, that he can simply shrug off her hacks and it won't mean anything. And we also know this is consistent because within Bleach, when Ichigo first fought Kenpachi in the Soul Society arc, Ichigo actually ended up damaging himself, per se. And we also see him bleeding out when he tries to cut Kenpachi. Because of this, we would know that if any of them tried to use their hacks on Barry, they would just backfire and end up killing them. So obviously, I think Barry should just slam the verse pretty easily. And how far he would get, the Bambis, the Espada, even the Soul King himself would just unironically lose to Barry. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to subscribe and give me and like and hit the notification bell for more content. All right, that's all I got today. Peace out. Bye.